There are so many anime airing in the fall 2023 season, and if you're anything like me, sometimes combing through all of these options can feel a bit overwhelming. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I've watched some of everything coming out right now, because aside from just anime, TV in general has just been really good for me this fall. But I have been making sure to keep my weeb side entertained with these 5 shows. I've also been keeping up with some old favorites, but everything on this list began this season, so if you're interested in watching any of them, you won't need to play catch up first. Before we get to the list though, let me know in the comments which anime you're watching. It doesn't have to be current. I just like getting recommendations for things that I've never seen, and you might be introducing someone else in the comments to their new favorite show. Also, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications, because it's the best way to keep track of my latest uploads. Now let's get to the video. Spring, the season when flowers bloom and romance wafts through the air. It's the perfect time to confess your feelings to your crush so you can create a summertime worth of memories. The worst they can do is say no, right?
Makes me want to puke my guts out. I'm so sorry.
Rintaro is a hopeless romantic who's been getting rejected by girls since he was 8 months old. The thing he wants most in life is a girlfriend, but by the time he receives his 100th rejection in a row, he's ready to call it quits. In his desperation, Rintaro visits a shrine dedicated to the gods of love and prays that he gets a girlfriend. When one actually responds to him, they say that not only will he get a girlfriend in high school, he'll meet 100 of his soulmates who will all be madly in love with him. At first, this sounds kinda like a weird wish fulfillment type of story. And honestly, it might still be. But the god leaves out an important detail. Normally, people are only supposed to have one soulmate, but because of an error he made, the god gave Rintaro 100. And if any of them fail to get into a relationship with him,
and they die.
For me, when I normally see shows that look like this, it's an automatic skip. As I've gotten older, there have been a few anime tropes that I've stopped caring for. Not to yuck anyone's yum or anything, but the harem trope and a lot of the stuff that usually comes with it do absolutely nothing for me. That being said, I think the show handles those things in a unique way. 100 Girlfriends is a romantic comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a parody of the genre, and a pretty good one at that. All of the tropes that you expect to see are there, but it leans into the silliness of them so much. I would honestly say that this is one of the funniest anime that I've seen in a few years. There's fourth wall breaking jokes, physical humor. The show legitimately has me cracking up as I watch it. Fair warning though, I do have the sense of humor of a child, so I don't know if everybody watching this is actually going to mess with it. The main character, Rintaro, is kinda sick. He's actually a good guy that doesn't want to be in the situation he's in, but since he's there, he's trying his hardest to make sure that all 100 of his soulmates not only get the romance they deserve, he's also trying to make sure that they all make it out of this mishap alive. And this takes a little bit of finesse, because most people don't want to share the love of their life with another person, let alone 99 others. If this happened in the real world, Rintaro would be a cult leader, or have his own show on TLC. But since it's a funny little cartoon, it's cool to see how he navigates through this insane situation, while trying to keep in mind the wants and feelings of his 100 soulmates. I've mostly been focused on the comedy aspect, and it seems like the series is also, but there are some genuinely sweet and romantic moments between Rintaro and the other characters as well. My son has game, and as outrageous as it sounds, he actually takes the time to sweep each one of them off their feet. Okay, cool. But how does this compare to other rom-coms?
Shit, I don't even know. Like, I can't even tell you that.
I wouldn't know, because I don't usually watch them, but I have been having a lot of fun with this. Would you believe me if I told you that one of the best and most wholesome anime of the season was about a 17-year-old drug dealer and kidnapping victim who's forced to work as a servant?
Huh?
Mao Mao is an apothecary in ancient China who lives with her father. One day, he says to her, "Mao Mao, I need you to deliver these drugs to the kind sex workers over in the red light district, but be careful because kidnappings are on the rise and the last thing you want to do is be killed." She gets kidnapped on her way home and is sold off to the imperial court where she works as a servant. Mao Mao wants to keep a low profile, do her time, and get out of there. But when the emperor's concubines and their children become sick with a mysterious illness, she steps up, finds the cause, and saves their lives in the process. Because of this, she starts getting a lot of unwanted attention and is approached to solve various medical mysteries that plague the palace that she uses her love of medicine and skills as an apothecary to handle. My first reaction to this show was, damn, this opening theme is a banger. Out of these 5 shows, this intro altogether is probably the best, but that's not why we're here. The Apothecary Diaries is a historical and medical drama/mystery. These are 4 words that will make me binge a show immediately. During any given episode, Mao Mao is presented with a problem that's usually related to one of the Emperor's concubines. If one of them is sick, then she spends her time trying to figure out what's causing their illness while also treating them. It sounds simple enough, but these mysteries she finds herself solving also have ramifications for the inner palace and the hierarchy that exists within. Mao Mao is easily one of my favorite protagonists of the season. For me, she and the way she interacts with the world around her are the main draw of the show. She is very nonchalant and is the type to just go with the flow. I've never seen a character barely react to getting kidnapped before. To her, it's just an inconvenience, much like the other things she ends up getting reluctantly dragged into after she's sold off. Because she spent the majority of her life experimenting with poisons and making medicine, she's somewhat reserved, but her experience with and knowledge of these things are what bring her out of her shell. She's kind of like a mad scientist when she gains access to new ingredients or when she's explaining the properties of the things she makes. She wants to stay low-key, but learns it's kind of impossible to do that when you're really good at your job. The people who live in the palace quickly come to respect her, especially a character named Jinchi. For the moment, there's a one-sided romance between he and Mao Mao on his part, and also the two of them just have a hilarious dynamic. The Apothecary Diaries feels like one of those shows that you could just watch even if it was about nothing at all, because by the nature of the setting, the characters are all in very dramatic situations. There's always something going on, and seeing them interact with each other can be either really intense, uplifting, or even funny at times. If you're looking for a chill anime that has good writing and is nice to look at, you should give this a try. For years, I've been seeing this cover for Shangri-La Frontier, and every time I've seen it, I've been really curious to know what this manga about a half-man, half-bird was about. Now that I've watched the show, I know that I literally could not have guessed anything about it from this picture alone. Rakuro's main hobby is playing and beating some of the worst video games imaginable. One day, his local GameStop employee recommends that he does something crazy and actually play a good video game for once. He's gotten so used to playing poorly designed games that when he logs into Shangri-La Frontier for the first time, even the smallest details blow him away. But he quickly dives right into the gameplay, ready to face a new world full of challenges. Sometimes it feels like if you've seen one isekai, then you've seen them all. But Shangri-La Frontier still finds a way to be refreshing when it's part of a stagnant and oversaturated genre. Somehow, because it also takes place in a fantasy world, and that fantasy world is also a video game. Yes, we've seen this all before, and isekai have a bad rep, but comparing Shangri-La to an average one is like comparing this to this. Do you remember how you felt watching season 1 of Sword Art Online for the first time, before it became terrible and yucky? I'm excited for this show the same way I was excited for that, and I think a lot of you will feel the same way. One thing that makes Shangri-La stand out though is that it doesn't have a lot of the things that make your average isekai feel like a chore to watch. The fate of the world isn't hanging in the balance, there aren't any real lives at stake. Rakuro doesn't have a harem that weirdly includes his cousin for some reason. He's just a kid playing a game during his summer break. He grinds mobs, fights bosses, and takes some pretty big L's occasionally. But he's determined to conquer this world the same way he does any of the shitty games that he's played before. And it's so cool to see this character do it with excitement no matter what obstacles get in his way.
Okay, let's not forget, I'm here to freaking enjoy this!
It's kind of rare that a show about a video game is accurate. Shangri-La might be missing the racism of voice chats, but it gets just about everything else right. The show discusses mechanics, bugs, strategies. If you play titles like Dark Souls or Monster Hunter, you're going to lose your mind watching this. But you also don't have to be a big nerd to enjoy the show either. I still haven't even mentioned the best part. Shangri-La Frontier is beautiful. The animation is consistently at a high quality, the action is well choreographed, and when it's flashy, it's not flashy to the point of being distracting. During some of the fights, I found myself seeing Rakuro doing some really cool stuff and saying, damn, rewinding and going, damn, again. It's crazy. And somehow, I was even more impressed with the sound design. I specifically watched this with headphones and it sounds immaculate. As the characters are walking, you can hear their feet crushing the grass beneath them. You'll hear birds chirping, water flowing, and leaves rustling in the wind. Shangri-La Frontier is pure entertainment, and if I still haven't convinced you to watch it, then let me introduce you to Emil. She's a cute little bunny. Since we're talking about fantasy worlds, we might as well keep it up and discuss the best fantasy anime of the season. Frieren and the rest of the hero's party defeat the Demon King after a 10-year journey. When it's all over, they all go their separate ways and meet up again after 50 years. To her, this passes by in moments, but to them, it's an entire lifetime. They all meet up and share one last adventure, and eventually one of her friends dies, causing her to become stricken with grief. She realizes that she took her time with them for granted and thinks to herself, even though I knew a human's lifespan is so short.
Why didn't I try to better know and understand you?
Her friend Himmel's death inspires her to go on a new journey with no real destination in mind, but rather a goal, to learn as much about humanity as she can. Frieren retraces the steps that she and her old friends once took together, while building new relationships and facing her regrets about the time that she squandered. Frieren is a relaxing and heartfelt anime about human connections and our experience with grief. However, for a story that dives deep into the theme of loss and all of the emotions that come with it, it never wallows in its sadness. It's more of a celebration of life, and it serves as a nice way to remind us that the most important things in our short time on Earth are the connections that we make with each other. Frieren is over 1,000 years old, which is still young for an elf in this world, and because of her lifespan, she's become an indifferent, almost apathetic person. She doesn't really experience or understand emotions the same way that everyone else around her does. Anyone in her shoes would be the same way, and this is a part of the reason why elves are usually cold and distant in fantasy media. Seeing her make a real attempt to change this despite her own perception of time is heartwarming. She uses her love of magic to become closer to her friends that she's lost, and even tries to learn things about the friends that she makes during her new journey. It feels kind of cliched to say this, but all of the characters in this story feel like they could be people you actually know. They all have their own flaws, habits, and motivations. When you're watching Frieren relive her old memories, there's this air of nostalgia that makes you feel like you're just hanging out with old friends. They have fun, talk about life, and help each other grow as people like good friends are supposed to do. I've already talked about how much I've enjoyed reading the Frieren manga before on this channel, but I think the anime hits a little bit harder, for me at least. With the help of the relaxed animation style, the beautiful score, and the coloring, I think it makes for a slightly more intimate experience. The show is melancholic, almost therapeutic to watch, and it's one that people are probably going to be talking about for a while. 7 of the world's greatest robots become famous for the roles they play in ending the 39th Asian War. Years later, one of the most beloved among them, Mont Blanc, who has since become known for his work in nature preservation, is brutally murdered. His fellow war vet, Europol detective Gesicht, is sent to investigate and ends up uncovering a conspiracy to destroy the remaining robots who also fought in the war. Gesicht finds himself dealing with his own mental struggles and hatred from humanity while racing to save the other bots and confront the mysterious entity known only as Pluto. In the world of Pluto, robots are highly advanced to the point where they can perfectly replicate human behaviors and emotions. There are laws in place that grant them equal rights as citizens and protections that prevent robots from killing humans. But this world isn't perfect. Both robots and humans alike experience the growing pains that come with them trying to peacefully coexist. How can I get along with robots when they take our jobs and have programmed emotions? What does it really mean to be human when you can hardly tell the difference? These are some of the questions that are posed in this masterfully written story. Pluto examines human emotions through the lens of the robots and their struggles during these character testing events. Most of the 7 who fought in the war end up developing some form of PTSD from having to kill countless of their kind. After the war is over, they search for their own purposes in life. They start families, get new jobs. We see them show regret for their actions, exhaustion from being overworked, and sadness when someone they love dies. On the flip side, some of the human characters display their worst tendencies, killing robots indiscriminately and even building their own organizations on the foundation of bigotry. This show is stuffed to the brim with pathos. It's deep, and also draws you in with mystery. What type of robot can kill a human when it's forbidden? A flawed one who has an error in their programming, or a perfect one that acts on its own like a human? You'll be focused on things like this. The next thing you know, you're watching a retired murderbot and a robot racist help each other work through their past traumas. You might not cry, but I doubt you can make it through this whole show without thinking to yourself, this is hella sad. Pluto is such a banger, and all 8 episodes are out now on Netflix, or other places. But you should know that the English dub is also really good, so if you're dub only, you don't really need to feel bad about it for this one. Well, that's everything. Make sure you let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to check the description for my socials. Thanks for watching. Peace.